say more about what was it that made her think So I've been thinking about Sharon Eyal's piece, the first piece on the program. And could you say something about, this was a piece that had been made originally for Netherlands Dance Theatre, and then it developed and changed in putting it on Ballet BC. Could you say something about that process?
Yeah, first of all, again, thank you so much for being here tonight, you guys, for taking the time to spend it with us. Sharon and I had been talking about what's the next step. We had done Bill, which she had made for Batsheva Dance Company, a longer version, and then we did the shorter version. And we were kind of looking at how can we continue this conversation. And so originally we talked about a new work, but then it came up that she had this work, Bedroom Folk, that she really wanted to be able to keep passing on, but she was quite specific that only certain companies could do it. So we decided that we would do it, but we would take it from its original eight cast and expand it. And I was super excited about that because I think Sharon's work has a certain vibration to it. And when it's done, when it's populated with more people, it just takes on such a beautiful texture.
Oh, so it intensifies the effect of
exactly,
that group.
It intensifies, and also just, there's so much individuality but collectivity. And what I also find fascinating about Sharon's work is that she is, she always, takes the chapeau to classicism. That and the way she builds her scores, the way she introduces the body into space, I think really does kind of hearken on ballet training as well.
Well, I was thinking about, she is not somebody whose work you have performed. And I was thinking, as watching it again tonight, and thinking, what would you love to do about the dance and what would you hate to do about it? If you were to have to step in and take on a part, what would be exciting about dancing her work?
Well, the first thing I would say is that if I was if I was dancing now, Sharon would be somebody I would want to work with, if I had that pleasure as a dancer. And I think it's probably why I've presented her work, is because what would I love to do? Everything about it. There's so much imagery and fantasy that she works with. She challenges the body, and I mean that in a very positive way, as far as expressively what we're able to, it's not interpret, but experience in the moment of dance. She asks for all of it and more, and she asks for it all the time. So I don't actually see there being anything I would hate about it. It would just be,
except that being up on point,
yes,
like that.
living on a constant demi point is not easy on the calves. That's true. We have some dancers now just taking care of themselves that are, but it's so her. I mean, it makes so much sense when you look at the world that she creates, that it's our job to make that work. Yeah.
So your piece is next on the program, and I was thinking, these poor dancers, they go from that world of kind of containment and explosive to then everything that you ever think about ballet and its sense of stability and verticality, you just erase from what they're able to do. So it's about not only like sliding through space, but being down on the ground and back up out of it. Could you say something about the development process and how you were working with the dancers to get them, because they're such individuals in this work?
So the first thing is that when I make a work, I do work very closely. Actually, a lot of our choreographers do. There's a lot of agency in the room, in the creative process, and I think that that's a good thing for the dance. It's happening primarily a lot in the dance world, but I'd say in this company there's a lot of confidence in that area. So I started the first day with the dancers kind of saying, if you were to describe yourself today, what would that mean? And we were looking a lot at action paintings, and there's the Gutai group out of Japan that they used to swing from ropes and literally paint, and so we were kind of looking at that liberation of spirit and different alternative ways of expressing ourselves. So we kind of scored all these ideas, and then that kind of liberation of spirit is where I started. And so it was, each one of them had a very specific solo, and the base of the piece comes from that. And I really wanted it to be an examination of the inside turning out, and so for them personally. So they're very personal solos. So the groundedness also was something that just came out of where they were at, and I think physically, I mean, that's aesthetically what attracts me, is that kind of earthiness.
And so then, did the Hendrix come into it later, once you were discovering this liberation, or was that a place you started also?
The Hendrix was always something, I'd been dying to do something to jazz or blues music, and I fell in love with this album, Blues by Jimi Hendrix, and But it took a long time. Well, not a long time. It was a question mark whether we would get the rights. And just as we were entering into the process of making the piece, I still hadn't secured the rights. The company hadn't. But we were trying and we were trying and we were trying. We were getting really close. But it was like we were counting the minutes of when I would have to like confirm the use of the music, or I'd have to choose something else. And we just kept trying. And the Experience Hendrix has been so fantastic, the family, because obviously the rights to his music changed recently, and they have been very supportive of us doing it.
Oh, that's
So,
great.
yeah.
That's great to hear. So a thing that's kind of striking about both your piece and then seeing Walerski's piece, the final piece in the program, is this notion of like so much music and then silence. And could you say, it makes me think also of John Cage and his notion of silence and how it teaches us to listen in a different way. But could you say something about how you think it helps us look in a different way?
Well, you'll notice it was on purpose that the first piece of music, the Maria Callas, Bellini, is played at a very low level, as if it's coming from the distance. And that was something Medhi really wanted. And in each house, it becomes a very tricky thing to monitor because of the extra, level of sound. One thing we do just that might add to this first is when we are rehearsing, we will often discuss turning off the music when we're watching a video, so we can actually see the dynamics of the body. I mean, I think if we're doing our jobs well, we shouldn't need music to dance. The phrasing should be inside the body. But when you then add the complement of music, it becomes a beautiful conversation. So silence is, there is never silence, but I think that it really allows our eye to just look compositionally at something and to have to refresh our relationship to sound and dance.
So this piece he made in 2011 for the company. So it's an earlier work for him, and you've continued your relationship. So what's it like to see you have a new work of his on the season that will be next year, and then looking at this, and what are you finding or discovering in this piece as you're doing it now?
Yeah, the fascinating thing too is that we have some of the original cast members in the piece tonight, but also many new dancers. And Medhi actually came back to help us rehearse it this time around. I think it's a great testament of the piece being able to withstand time. That's always wonderful to be able to see a piece come back and see how it makes a comment on the generation at that moment or the time period. It has a certain signature for the company because it came into our repertoire when we were trying to rebuild the company. We were in bankruptcy protection 10 years ago, and we didn't know if the company was going to exist any longer. And when he came in, it was his first now of 4 pieces. And there was a celebratory, that the idea of ritual and ceremony was so special at that moment. And to come back now for my 10th anniversary to do that again, there was a special memory, and also our audience has a special memory too. But I would say that we've only gotten deeper in the looking at the piece, but it still, to me, is still so much who we are. It still speaks to so much of what Ballet BC is right now as a company. Collectivity, but individuality, musicality, attention to the detail, to the expression of the body and that relationship. And that's part of the reason why I love Petite Cérémonies. It does take you through that journey of so many different landscapes. But I think it's really important for me as a director that the company expresses all aspects of our humanity, and to deny, we were talking about this earlier tonight, about the idea of playfulness or joy or whimsy, and that somehow intellectually we tend to push that aside as if it's some kind of, we need to negate it in order to sound smarter. Actually, I think that that's missing the point of that's a whole spectrum of who we are, is to hold all of those things. And so I love the fact that we can do that and then turn around and do something really dark and obscure, or whatever it is, but to show that range and to show it with the same level of intention.
Do you ever wonder about the word ballet now and what it means for Ballet BC and what it means historically and how it resonates?
I was asking that question the day I got this. I've been asking that question since I started training in ballet, but more so when I started dancing professionally. We keep ballet in our title on purpose in order to continue the conversation about what ballet can be. If we extract that, then we take away the potential of what ballet actually is right now. So I think as I grow older, and I still hope I have a lot of years to examine this question, is ballet keeps becoming home.
And that home can...
And then home can, to experiment. That the more I allow, it's so misunderstood in a lot of ways, and it is such it has given me personally such a foundation, but it's the way we think about it. It's the way we pass it on that we have to look at, not the thing itself. And with this, talking about just potential, I think about ballet and I think about why I was attracted to it, the idea of leaping, extending into space and launching ourselves, our spirit, elevating and expressing that I could not imagine flying in a more exuberant way than what ballet allowed. But it was the trying to make it perfect that trapped me. But if we pass it on correctly, we will never lose that spirit inside of it. And that's where ballet has so much potential. Its articulation with now all of the other styles of dance alongside, that we just shouldn't negate any of them. Dance, when we are doing it fully, every dance form connects somewhere. And ballet is not in one box, nor is modern dance, nor is contemporary, but we need to relate, we need to find what's common, we need to find out what's different, and we need to applaud each and not feel like we're in separate countries that don't talk to each other. And I think that's why I like working for Ballet BC, is because we're always a bridge. We're a bridge saying, no, ballet's not this, and no, contemporary dance is not this. We're actually just trying to talk. We're trying to talk through dance, and we need all of it as a tool to do it.